Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we've got new reveals. Actually, last night we got 2 ICEJADE cards, and this morning we got 2 Dogmatica cards revealed for Photon Hypernova. Of course, if you have not been paying attention to this lore, the ICEJADE cards have that whole archetype has kind of ended up being more, for lack of a better term, like the redheaded stepchild of the whole Dogmatica, Ecclesia, Albaz lore. It's kind of unfortunate because like literally every other archetype in that lore, aside from like Spring-Ins, ended up being like a tier 1 deck at some point. It's crazy. But yeah, so 2 cards there. Hopefully those will help out a lot. And then the Dogmatica stuff, I believe it is more ritual focused, but we will get there in just a second. So starting off here, we have a level 10 Synchro. Crazy. So yeah, this is ICEJADE Adrienne Jameer, a Water Aqua Synchro effect monster, level 10, 3000 attack, 1500 defense. I believe she's level 10, right? Yeah. Takes a water tuner plus any other non-tuners, so pretty generic, just needs that water tuner to start. You can only use the first and second effects of this card's name each once per turn. Quick effect. You can make face-up monsters you control unable to be destroyed or banished by your opponent's card effects for the rest of this turn. Then, if this effect was activated in response to the activation of an opponent's card or effect, any card or effect, you can banish all cards with that name on their field and in their graveyard. Ooh, so that's actually pretty spicy because that just means any card they're activating on the field or in grave, if you're just chaining this card, you're banishing that card. This isn't just banished other copies of that card, it's anything. So if they're using a monster effect on field, you chain this card to give yourself your protection, and then you banish all copies of that card. That's pretty sweet. Especially if you're playing against something like, I think about like Sprite, where they could have like a blue in grave, a blue on field that they're activating like in a grind game, and then you're like banishing both and they only have 1 blue left in rotation. Handle that and you're cutting off like a pretty serious piece of their engine. Stuff like that. It's pretty interesting. But there's other ways too, obviously versus tier, banishing, like chaining this in response to a like one of their monsters triggering to do a fusion summon on your turn or their turn, whichever. You're banishing it and giving yourself protection. Pretty freaking huge. Yeah, this card still gets owned, and your whole field will get owned by bouncing removal, so returning your stuff to hand as well as shuffling, or sending. But from protection and banishing, which we've seen an uptick in banishing, this is actually not a bad card overall. If it's easy enough to make, I think it's pretty decent. Also, there's a second effect. If a card or cards is banished by an opponent's effect while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card. Again, like I just said, we've been seeing a good amount of like banishing stuff, whether it's Sprite Smashers or we're going to see the Kshatriya Law monsters come into fruition. Or we're going to see the Bisted monsters come around, right? There's going to be a good amount of stuff that just banishes pretty frequently, so that's actually a pretty decent float, and it kind of deters your opponent from going for certain removal, which is pretty cool. All right, not a bad card for sure. Again, it feels like this deck just needed better engine stuff. This is still a decent card, but like they still need something. Maybe this will come up as a generic card down the line, but we'll have to see. Next up here, we move to the Great ICEJADE Sword Appearance. It's a normal spell card. You can only use the first and second effects of this card's name once per turn. If there is a monster on your opponent's field and or in their graveyard, and you control a water monster, so pretty, like, it kind of sounds like a lot, but it's not that bad. Your opponent just needs to have any monster on field or in grave, and you just need a water monster, which is your deck. Your deck is just water monsters. You can take 1 ICEJADE monster from your deck and either send it to the graveyard or special summon it. Now, that's not too shabby, for sure. Wow, okay, so it is a conditional card, but it does just summon an ICEJADE from deck. Or Foolish Burial It. Most of the time, you're probably just summoning, but interesting. Then if a face-up ICEJADE monster you control, or monsters you control, leaves the field by your opponent, so except by being destroyed, so wouldn't be in battle phase, but any removal that isn't destruction, pretty much, You can banish this card from your graveyard to target one card your opponent controls and banish it. So cool. Like, again, like, pretty solid card here. It does also have Ice Jade in the name. So I believe this becomes searchable off of the little one. I don't know if it's level 1 or level 2, but I think it searches an Ice Jade card or spell traps. So being able to search this, that would already be your water monster on the field. And as long as your opponent has put, they could have even hand trapped you on your turn 1. And now this card's live, right? To pretend to, you know, summon another one from deck, keep it moving and kind of climb up, which is pretty interesting. I'd be curious to see. I mean, we already look sometimes at like the, what is that? Mermail, like Mermail Atlantean deck, where like just kind of a good stuff water jumble up deck. Maybe there's a world where like Ice Jade actually jumps in that deck as another engine to make use of. We'll have to see. It's pretty interesting though. All right, moving on here, we have a level 12 ritual for Dogmatica. This is White Zoa of Dogmatica. Level 12 light spellcaster, ritual, effect monster. 4,000 for the stats. Damn well better be if it's going to be a level 12 ritual. You can ritual summon this card with Dogmatic Calamity. Cannot be ritual summoned except with a Dogmatica card's effect, and you can only use the second effect of this card's name once per turn. First effect reads, Dogmatica monsters you control are unaffected by your opponent's activated Fusion, Synchro, Exceed, and Link effects. So pretty much just unaffected from all extra deck monsters. And I like that this is just straight up Fusion, Synchro, Exceed, and Link monsters, not like monsters that are Fusion, Exceed, Synchro, and Link summoned, which is very huge because that means they can't like summon it, get it to grave, have a way to revive it, and then use like a removal effect. It still counts as one of those effects, I believe. So that's really, really cool. 4,000 is huge. Forces your opponent to have spell and trap outs or main deck monster / ritual well, that is main deck. So just main deck monster outs. That's pretty cool. This card could just win duels if they don't have tech cards that can remove this card in spell and trap form, or like they play a deck that has an engine where the main deck is very engine focused, doesn't have any active removal in there. Which is pretty cool. That could definitely win duels. Second effect, during your main phase, you can have your opponent apply one of these effects. Your opponent picks one, but I think they're both okay. They send one card from their hand or extra deck to the graveyard for every 2 cards in their extra deck. Whoo! That effect is insane, because if you go first and you fire this off, they're going to have 15 cards in their extra deck, which means 7. They will have to, between their extra deck and their hand, they would have to pitch 7 different cards. Now, it depends on the deck. Obviously, you play Fluandereeze. They don't give a shit. You play a deck that has Dogmatica Punishment or like Ultimate Slayer targets. They're going to be fine. But 7 is a huge number. Even if it's a deck that only uses its extra deck like minimally, usually those are the kind of decks that also play Prosperity or Extravagance. So they may have like 1 or 2 cards they care about in the extra and pitch everything else, but now you're kind of making those cards like super mid, because now they're pulling on their most important cards if they have to fire those cards off. Or they're pitching cards from hand. It's really, really powerful. That effect by itself could just win like that, as well as being attached, but your opponent gets to pick. So the other one would say they return all Fusion, Synchro, Exceed, and Link monsters they control to the extra deck. I'm going to assume the second effect cannot be like, if this isn't the ruling, then this card sucks really bad, I think, unfortunately. But if it is, then it's still really good. If the second effect can still be selected by your opponent, even if they don't control any of these types, then this card kind of sucks. Because like, why would they ever just like pitch half their extra deck or some multiple cards in hand? Like, why would they ever do that? But for the second effect, like if they can pick it and they don't control anything, like they're just gonna pick that every time. Even if they do have 1 or 2 monsters, like they'll just probably pick, because the alternative is like just lose the duel. So it's pretty brutal. I don't know. That it's really just going to come down to like, can they select the second effect even if they don't control any? If they can, this card sucks. If they can't, then this card's great because going first, like this card can just auto win. It's probably just a one of, so yes, it's technically a brick, but you know, it is what it is. Like for what this card is going to get you is like pretty insane. But yeah. All right, moving on here, we have a new spell as well. This is Dogmatica Tricks. Okay. Continuous spell. You can only activate one card with this card's name per turn. When this card resolves, you can add a Dogmatica ritual monster or ritual spell from deck to hand. It's pretty good. Doesn't add anything generically with that first part, but you know, there are now, I think, 3 separate, like, respectable rituals for the archetype, as well as, like, the ritual spell that, you know, that this guy now needs to summon. So cool, getting one or the other. Then, if your opponent controls a monster, you can add any Dogmatica card from deck to hand. So that's the part I really like, is you also have the ceiling of like, oh, also give me Ecclesia. Also give me, you know, whatever else, you know, that is nice in this situation. I don't even think Dogmatica is that bad going second, especially because they allow pretty much the whole deck to extend out pretty easily. It's pretty sweet. So yeah, like I like that a lot. And the second effect, once per turn, if you control a Dogmatica ritual monster, you can look at either extra deck and send one monster from it to the graveyard. So even better, like combining this even more so with like White Zoa. So again, going off that ruling we were assuming before, if they cannot select the second effect because they don't have any of those, you literally, before you even do that, will look and pull the most important monster out of their extra deck, and then they still have to rip 7 cards. So they'll either be left with 7 cards in extra deck, or, you know, somewhere around 10, and they would have had to pitch multiple cards from hand, which is absolutely brutal. And you probably just win the duel from there, because this guy's already hard enough to out for most modern day decks. Really, really cool. I like this a lot. I think this card could see play in a pure Dogmatica list regardless, or like a ritual-based Dogmatica list regardless. This guy could see play. I still think he's a little bit cheeky. His tribute requirements are going to be huge. You need 12 levels worth of monsters, which is pretty brutal. But I still think it's doable. Dogmatica stuff pluses pretty well, so like you're going to have enough pluses to kind of like counteract everything you have to give up for him, especially if he does just win you the duel. But there's also like the other Dogmatica rituals where you could go for a lower ceiling, but they still they let you look at your opponent's extra deck and rip cards. So like those combined with the spells, you're ripping like 2 to 3 in the first 2 turns, as long as they're the most like important cards in your opponent's extra, definitely could come up. So very, very cool. I don't think these are meta warping cards, but I think for their individual strategies, they're pretty cool. The spells specifically are pretty nice engine pieces for those kinds of strategies. The boss monsters, I think this one's a little bit more useful just because it's a little more generic. It's going to be a little easier to make for a lot of decks, whereas this one is this one's just going to be a lot. But if you get it out, it's no joke for sure. So there you go. 4 more cards added to the pool. I'll keep you guys updated. We're still set for like another 35 plus cards in the next, you know, not even 2 weeks. So we're going to get a ton here. I will keep you updated on that. Thank you so much for watching. I'll stay tuned for more. Subscribe if you haven't. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.